Hi guys, Sabrina from Campbell's Freedom Farm, and as I promised that I'm going to try to propagate by cutting an allspice plant. Remember I just did the video from our quick trip going to the Will Rogers gardens. But before we do this, I have one of the allspice leaves and I want to try to make the tea. We did do one and it is delicious, but I thought I'd try to do one with you. So you just take a very small cut. At first, we didn't heed the warning and we used too big of a piece. So a very small piece, a cup, and some really hot water. Now, while we do the video, we're going to let these steep. So, to propagate this allspice, I'm going to do two sections. Because remember, when I propagate by cuttings, I want long pieces with nodes. So, I have already picked a spot here. So, what I want to do is I want to cut right by this node, kind of at an angle. And then I'm going to tear off the bottom pieces that are going to go, oh wow, this has a new stem growing. And then I'm just going to basically cut the rest. Now, part of the problem with the allspice with propagating is it's from the tropicals, from Jamaica really, and Central America. And that has a high altitude and it's very tropical. So it really needs a lot of moisture. So, but you don't want to drown it either. I actually thought about putting this into water and propagating it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut every leaf pretty much except for two. Then I'm going to cut it. Like this. Do you see that? Then I cut at the node, which is unusual for me, and then I'm just going to score it. So you get to kind of see a little of the pulp. Do you see that? And hold on one second. Got my take root, and I'm going to dab it on liberally. Now I'm going to do two methods, one in cups, and remember some of my fig cuttings that I do a whole bunch I put in the big dome. I'm going to use that for this. Put a hole in there and I'm going to push this almost to the end. Okay, do you see this? And then I'm going to cover this. The soil is slightly damp, but this is going to be a high humidity, but it has a top with a pretty good gap. Now I'll tape this. You don't need to see that. And then the second one, I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm going to start it out with a cup lid, and then after about 2 weeks I'm going to basically take the lid off slightly. How do you slightly do it? Well, I'll show you. Usually put a stick like this and then put the lid back on, and that way it gets used to the humidity around. Now I'm doing the same thing, and I know it looks horrible, but you don't want this plant putting the last energy to grow leaves. You really want it. Oh, and also I want to snip this right here. Whoop. Hopefully it didn't hit you. And this one, I left my thumb rule. And that way we could see both ways. And by the way, the figs that we just propagated, the Chicago Hardy, all of them are starting to do something, which is great. Now, the same thing. Okay, so I have a cup with several holes. I'm going to put it with my figs on a warm floor that's not warm on the top. After a week or 10 days, I'm going to put a stick here to slightly move this up. And that way it gets used to everything. Now, let's talk about the allspice. Really, the allspice shrub, it's really a shrub, it didn't get to Europe until the 1600s when Christopher Columbus took it over. And they loved the smell of that. So all of Europe got it then. And they have used it for minced pie. Those, we need to try that once. And soups and everything. Once it came to Europe, it was such a success. But the Russians, for just fun facts, used it to keep themselves warm, their feet, during the war. And so it really helped. And also, they put some of the leaves or sprinkled them in there to keep their feet smelling a little better, because it does smell amazing. But the health benefits are incredible. Antiviral, antioxidants, and let me think, inflammation, but it's also possible use to fight cancer, which I'll be really curious how that works. So hopefully mine propagate. If not, we have to get a new one, and it takes like 5 years for it. Okay. Well, first I should maybe try this first. So, it really didn't change the color much, just slightly. Okay, it kind of reminds me of the holidays. And then, when you use honey, make sure it's pure honey. No additives, no anything else. It's like the olive oil that people are messing with it. And if you have allergies, try to get something that's local, because it'll really help with your immune system, but it lets your body get used to all the pollens in that area. Okay. Okay, it is so good. So good. It's almost like you're making a chai tea, which I might add this to my chai tea. Now, what am I going to do with the rest of these leaves? Actually, some of these really soft leaves, I'm also going to try to propagate them by the leaf. I'm not going to count on it, but it has a possibility. It's a thicker leaf with a lot of veins. The rest I'm going to dry, and I'm going to use for my dishes and for my teas, my chai teas, and everything else. But this is fun. Let me know if you have propagated the allspice by cuttings. Now, why aren't we going to propagate it by the seed? Like, we could go to the store, and some of our stuff we could just buy in the spice aisle, especially if you go to an Asian market or an Indian market, and propagate it that way. That doesn't work. What happens is they pick the berries while they're green, before they're ripe. And then they dry it, that way they get grinded or whatever. It's kind of like when we did the walnut hull. We wanted the green shells, husks. And so that won't work. Otherwise you have to buy something, and you have to do it in a certain time period while it's ripe, not dry. So, but this is fun experiment. And next thing we're going to do is start our strawberries several ways. And also remember, we're going to do a Asian dish and maybe plant an Asian garden. So we could start inside and move it outside. This is Sabrina from Campbell's Freedom Farm. Thumbs up.